This edition of MacVoices is supported by you, our viewers and listeners, through our new Patreon campaign. If you get value from MacVoices, please consider helping support the show by visiting patreon.com/MacVoices. Welcome back to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, as we get more and more great tools from Apple, we get more and more great training from a variety of sources. One of my favorites, of course, is Mr. David Sparks. He's the author of a whole lot of field guides. This time, when we scheduled this, we were going to talk about one, and then he came out with another one. So now we've got two field guides to talk about.
Okay.
So, David, first, welcome. It's great to see you.
Thanks, Chuck. It's great to be here.
Yeah, and the field guides we're talking about are the Siri Shortcuts field guide and the OmniFocus field guide. So OmniFocus was not a big surprise to me because you've long been a fan and advocate for OmniFocus.
Yeah.
And I probably shouldn't be surprised by the Siri Shortcuts because that's just such a hot thing right now.
Yeah, well, I'm super into automation. I do that podcast with Rose Orchard called the Automators. And we talk about all the time on Mac power users too, but I'm a big fan of automation. And when Apple released Siri Shortcuts in San Jose, I got really excited about it. And I've been using it all through the beta. I didn't really intend to make a field guide about it, but then I was having so much fun with it. I'm like, you know what? This is something people are going to want to know about. And I really hope that people who aren't normally inclined to automate things will be tempted by this because Apple has really democratized automation with this new technology.
Interesting way to phrase it, David, but I understand exactly what you mean. And it struck me as, and I have not played with it nearly to the point that you have, but I feel like it lets us, instead of having to wait for somebody to create the shortcut that I want or for one of the other devices, the skill that I want, it lets me do it, and it lets me do it easily. And it puts the relationship a bit more between me and the developer as opposed to me and the manufacturer of the device.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you look at traditionally, like even something like AppleScript, which is supposed to be a programming language for normal people, there's some limits to that because you still have to learn a programming language, and who wants to do that? And then you look at Automator, which is a great kind of Automator led the way, in my opinion, to Siri Shortcuts because Automator is the idea of Lego brick automation where you just stack things. You don't need to know a lick of programming. But it never went far enough. Apple never gave it, I think, whatever love it needed to make it as big as it could have been. And then the workflow app, which I wrote a field guide on that as well, or made a video field guide on that many years ago, is really the best of both worlds. It's got really powerful automation, the kind of stuff you could do on a Mac with AppleScript, but it's all with this stackable brick automation where you say, okay, the first thing I want to do is get the name of the user. Okay, put a question on the screen. What's the username? And you type that in, and it saves that. And then the next thing I want to do is write an email to that person or whatever. You can do all this stuff, and it's very rewarding to make it, I think, for people, especially people who've never done this before, because it's like, wait, I just made a program in essence. And but it's also very accessible. I mean, and the way Apple made all this stuff shareable, like with my Siri Shortcuts field guide, there's 40 chapters, and most of them have at least one Siri shortcut that we're building in the video. But right there under the video, you push the button and you download it to your device. So you can just take my work and run with it, or you can build it yourself. But I don't know. I feel like we're entering a very interesting time for automation. It may be something that a lot more people start doing.
I agree with you. When you said, up to this point, when you said AppleScript, a lot of people's eyes glaze over. You say Automator, and about a third of the people's eyes glaze over. And but with Siri Shortcuts, maybe because it's Siri, and I realize we're saying that word, so I hope we're not triggering a lot of things, hopefully without the first word. But because it's Siri, people have come to understand how easy that is and how powerful it is. And so by tying those two together, I think maybe that's something that is making it, at least giving the perception of being more approachable.
Yeah, I think people get the idea. If they try Automator, they get the idea. But then the next question is, what can I do with this? And there's such a limited number of tools with Automator that you run out of ideas pretty quick about what you can do with it. Whereas with Siri shortcuts, you get access to virtually all the data on the phone. Like one of the ones I made in the course is one that I send to my daughter. It figures out where I am and it figures out where she is when I'm going to pick her up, and it texts her a time estimate. So now if I'm going to pick her up at a friend's house or school or whatever, actually this one was built for the school, the one I put in the course, but it just says, hey, I'm on the way. I'll be 22 minutes. And the device is getting my, it knows the school address. It's taking my location. It's figuring out the traffic between here and there and sending her a text message that's personalized from me, telling her what my estimated time of arrival is. And all I have to do to trigger it is say, the magic word, blah, 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 tell Sarah I'm coming. And then it just does it, and that's a magical, that's when you start thinking about that. It's like, wait, I just made an app that just works with my daughter, but tells her how long it's going to be until I get there. And that's just one tiny bit of it. It's not just maps. You can get into contacts and Safari. And now with Siri shortcuts, you can access data from other applications. So I can say, time to review, and it'll play Miles Davis. It'll turn on the lights in my office, and it will open OmniFocus to the review screen. It's just, this stuff is really fun.
Yeah, I think the very first shortcut I did was within Overcast. And it was, there was nothing to it. It's like, okay, you do this. And now I have voice control of Overcast as much as I want, though. It's not that ambitious thing where it's trying to control everything. And I love the idea that the developer kind of says, these are the most common things that people want to do with my app. And so I'm building it in and using the framework that Apple gives me. And because it's a common framework, the knowledge I gain from doing that one, I will be able to apply to things like what you're building or to other apps. So there's a standardization going on here that I really appreciate.
Yeah, I think we're in for some fun times. And, the thing that makes me a little sad is, how come we don't have this on the Mac? I mean, who ever thought that we would have automation more powerful on the iPhone and the iPad than we would on the Mac, which is the open platform? And I know before people start writing me, I know about JavaScript and all these other tools. But for most humans, it's easier to automate things on your Mac, on your iPad, iPhone than it is on your Mac. Chuck, I'm sitting in front of my computer. I've got my, 3-year-old iPad Pro, my big ass iPad here. Sorry, my big iPad here. And it's full of Siri shortcuts. And I sit here all day and I need to make a new project. I push a button on this piece of glass next to my iMac and then things happen. It's really exciting times. Regardless of whether you're interested in my field guide, take some time to play with Siri shortcuts because you are going to be impressed.
So you said 40 chapters, I think you said, of this.
Well, it's 40 videos, and it adds up to over north of 3 hours. So the way I do these things is I just kind of make an outline of all the stuff I want to cover. And then I never really have a set time. Like the OmniFocus one's even worse. It's 5.5 hours. But I have all the stuff I want to cover, but then I do it in a way that everything's broken up into tiny pieces so you can go through it at your own pace or even skip over parts you're not interested in. With the Siri Shortcuts field guide, there's a whole bunch of basics in there teaching you how to do Siri Shortcuts basics. Then there's a section on each major component, like how do you deal with maps? How do you deal with the web? Different areas. And then at the end, there's just a pile of cool shortcuts I made that I just walk you through so you can kind of get an idea.
Okay,
and it's fun. Yeah.
So I'm watching you build them, but you also said that I can download what you've built and then modify it the way I want.
Yeah, once you install it on your device, you can do whatever you want with it. Yeah.
Okay.
That's the idea with Siri shortcuts. It's just the community makes it better. I've already got some where people bought the course. They didn't know a lick about Siri shortcuts. Now they're sending me their Siri shortcuts, which in some ways are better than mine were, in my opinion. So, it's great. I love it.
And again, we want to stress that there's not a bit of code. There's nothing.
No, there's no code. You can go. There's some interesting stuff happening now where it's getting a little nerdier. People are already pushing the limits of it, but you don't need to touch any of it. In fact, my course doesn't even go into some of that really deep stuff. I'm going to probably add some material to the course later. I just wanted to see how it all plays out. But like, for instance, there's a great app now out called Scriptable that is basically a JavaScript programming environment for the iPhone and the iPad. But I wasn't even sure Apple would approve it. It's a programming environment, but they did. So there's some even more advanced stuff going on the upper end of the stuff, but nobody that's listening to this that really needs to spend any time on that. I mean, just use the tools that Apple gave us, and you're going to make some cool automation.
Yeah, and this, I mean, they've pushed for a long time trying to make Automator as approachable as possible, but it's still it still requires some time and some effort, and it's not always as flawless as you would think. And to answer you, I mean, I have to wonder if the fact that these devices are in a lot more hands, I mean, that is that why that you think they put the focus on the automation for the iPhone and iPad?
Well, I mean, I think an obvious thing that's going on is it was already built. There was an app called Workflow that a group of really smart guys and gals put together, and it was essentially what became the Siri Shortcuts app. So it was already built. So Apple acquired them a couple of years ago now, and when they bought them, all of us nerds were panicked. We're like, oh no, this is like my most powerful tool on the iPhone. Is Apple going to buy them and like assign these guys to the Apple Maps team and just let this app die? And that's not what happened. Apple actually said, okay, we like what you did so much, we want to build it in the operating system. And now it's way more powerful because it's in the operating system. There's tools we can do with Siri shortcuts now that we couldn't do before. Like I have one. I just went into a meeting earlier today, and I have a Siri shortcut that when I go into a meeting does several things. But one of the things that is it turns my phone on Do Not Disturb. So while I'm in the meeting, I don't get any calls or interruptions. That never would have been possible as a third-party application. But now you can, not only can you control those things, you can get data back from them. Like you can have an airplane Siri shortcut. When you get on the airplane, it turns the brightness down or, loads up your favorite music or whatever you do when you get on an airplane, because you've just got more control of the device than you ever had before.
And you've got easy control of the device.
Yeah.
That's the thing. So yeah. I gather that the response to this has been pretty darn good.
Oh yeah, there's been a lot of people coming in. I get the the other thing I did, Chuck. You've been with me since the beginning. I used to do these iBooks author books, and I've transitioned to all these video because I think that's the easiest way to teach a lot of this stuff. I mean, people don't want to read 1,000 words about a Siri shortcut. They want to watch you build it and have you explain it. So I've switched over to video, and I set up my own school, in essence. It's learn.MacSparky, and that's where all my courses are. There's a bunch of free ones, and there's a bunch of ones that cost money. But I get numbers, and like everybody, I mean, it's impressive that all these people that are getting these courses are finishing them and making stuff. I mean, I love that. I'd like to think I have a little part of this becoming a thing, because I think the more people that use them, I'm sure Apple's paying attention, the more we're going to get out of it. The more people use Siri shortcuts, the more manpower Apple is going to put into making it better for next year. I mean, there's great things about it, but there's more that I would like them to add. I want more, right? That's what as soon as you give us a little, we want more, and especially with something like this.
Yeah, it's kind of human nature.
Yeah.
Setting up the learn.macsparky.com, that's an interesting approach. So the field guides, I mean, obviously the ones you finished are, whatever they were iBooks or now books.
I'll continue to support those. Like the iPhone field guide is getting an update in the next week or so for the iOS 12 release. But pretty much everything I'm going to make going forward is going to be these video products.
Okay, so what you're buying now when you buy a field guide is you're buying a series of videos that one follows the other, of course,
Yeah.
and you're not downloading, because I know you'd run into some problems or challenges before with the limitations of iBooks and just how much
Yeah.
video you could put into an iBook.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's one of the main reasons I moved. So the way I do it, I took my time setting this Learn.Mac Sparky site up, and every course is set up so you can download each individual video. So if you want to get on an airplane, you can download it, put it on your iPad or phone or whatever. So everything's downloadable. But the limit with iBooks Author was 2 gigabytes. You could not make a book that was bigger than 2 gigabytes. And like the video files for the Siri shortcuts are 6 gigabytes. It's 3 times the size of any iBooks Author book I'd be allowed to make. So, and the OmniFocus one's even bigger. So it's just like, I'm unleashed, Chuck. I'm dangerous now. Look out! Here he comes.
You're gonna have your own TV studio pretty soon.
Yeah, I even put sharks with lasers in the Siri shortcut. I didn't have room to put sharks with lasers in the iBooks Author books.
What do sharks with lasers have to do with Siri shortcuts?
It's just because Siri shortcuts to me is not just like having sharks. It's like having sharks with lasers attached to them. I don't know. It just came to my head. So I made an animation of it. I don't know.
You need sleep, David. You need sleep.
Yeah, 2 in a month is hard. That is true. 2 field
Yeah.
guides in a month.
Well, so let's kick over and talk about the OmniFocus field guide.
Yeah.
It's bigger than Siri shortcuts. It's bigger, better.
Yeah.
How do you approach the brand new version of
Yeah,
OmniFocus?
that one's been in production since March. OmniFocus has been hard at work on version 3. The first OmniFocus field guide I made was for version 2, and that was a video-only product as well, but it was when I had a kind of a worse distribution system. But everything is like sorted out now. And I went back and watched the original one, and a lot of people bought and loved the first one, but I felt like the thing with the first one is, looking back at it, it only really taught people how to use OmniFocus. And I wanted to address in this new one, not only the how, but the why. And what I mean by that is these powerful task managers, they're not for everybody. I mean, I got an email from a listener who said, I get by fine with the Reminders app. And I'm like, that's great. That's what you should use if that's what works for you. But there's some people that have a lot of obligations in their life, and having a more powerful task management system can really help them. But a lot of people say, okay, I get that. I'm going to buy the more powerful task management system. But then they don't really know how to wield that power. How do you make it work for you? And there's so many features in OmniFocus 3 that really allow you to get just laser in on one specific thing. And so I wanted to spend time talking about why that's important, and why you should set that up, and why really, if you're going to use one of these tools, you need to take it to the next notch, and it can really serve you well. So that took some time to cover all that.
When you talk about the lasering in, is this a new feature set in the new OmniFocus, or is it more of a technique of using the feature set that's already there?
Yes.
Yes. Oh, good.
It's actually both. I have some more advanced techniques for using it than I talked about the first time I went through the application. But then they've added several new features. They've added the ability to interlineate your task and your calendar events together, which it's pretty powerful for you to figure out your day. They've added tags, which really allow you to just zero in on something. Like one of the examples I talked about somewhere, I don't remember, but like we get a request for stickers from fans of the podcast and the blog and things. Sometimes people want stickers. So I had these requests all spread out through OmniFocus. I didn't have a single project for them. Now I just tag them with the sticker tag. And then when I say, okay, I'm going to spend an hour today sending out stickers, I can just hit the tag button and it'll pop up, or client invoicing. I'm a business lawyer by day, and I've got all these clients, and each one has invoicing reminders in their client project, but they're not in one single project. So I just open the tag for invoicing on the days I need to go through invoices, and it pulls them all up for me. And then you can take multiple tags. You can say, Give me a list of things that are low energy. I can do at Starbucks with my iPad, and it'll just it'll go through your thousands of tasks and find it. The whole thing is a needle in a haystack exercise. Because if you're using one of these powerful task managers, it's because you have a haystack. You have a lot of things you need to do. So you want better ways to laser into that and get the one piece you need or the 5 things you need to do and pull it out. And I spent a lot of time talking about how to get to that spot.
David, every time we start talking about task managers, you get into all the philosophical discussions, but you also get into the nuts and bolts of that particular system. How long does it take to set up an OmniFocus environment? I mean, how long does it take for you to suggest to the average person, hey, you have work, you have home, you have kids, you have those obligations. How long does it take to get it into the system so that you can actually start using the system?
I think you need to understand how it works, and I think you could do that in about a half day. And if you took a Saturday morning, watch my video, there's several people that have books on the topic, so you kind of understand the structure and how it works. And honestly, like with my video, you could build it along with the video. You could watch and build along. But the other thing about these tools, Chuck, is they're not going to spoon feed you. There's about 7 different ways to skin the cat. So like one of the things I do in the new version of the OmniFocus Field Guide is there's a whole section called systems. And there's like 6 or 7 different videos say, well, maybe you want to organize your task this way or that way. And I show you the different systems, and I have a slide explaining the positives and the negatives of each competing system. So you got to go through and figure out what works with your brain. But there's no one single way to do it, which is nice. And I know that's intimidating for people. But if you have a lot of tasks in your life, like for me, I've got a business, I've got the Mac Sparky thing, I've got kids, I've got a whole bunch of commitments in my life. And having a system allows me to wake up every day and have kind of a good feeling about what I'm going to do that day and what I'm not going to do. And when things change, I can run a different perspective or, pull a different needle out of the haystack and feel productive. And that's the thing. I mean, the worst feeling in the world is knowing that there's a bunch of stuff you're supposed to be doing, but not exactly knowing what it is or when you're going to do it. And that's a feeling that a lot of people have because the world today, everybody's multitasking and it's bananas. I mean, the opening for the OmniFocus Field Guide is all about capture. And the point I make is get all that stuff out of your head. Just, we're really good at avoiding like saber-toothed tigers. And, the stuff our brains are wired for is not holding a list of 1,000 tasks. We're just not good at that, and we're going to blow it. So get all that out of your brain with a tool like OmniFocus, and then have a rational way to sort through it when you need to, and you'll be surprised what you can do.
That's where I think that I wish more developers, and I know you've worked with OmniFocus, because you have these incredibly powerful tools, and you're right, they're so powerful that they're intimidating, and people A, don't know how to get the most out of them, but B, and much worse, a lot of times they don't even get started because they don't know how to get started. They open it up and it's like, oh my God, there's so many options here. How do I start with this, get some value out of it, and then grow into it as I have more needs or as I become more sophisticated with the program? And that's why I think something like the Field Guide, and it's really encouraging to me to hear that in half a day, Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon, I could sit down, and by the end of that time, if I commit to that time, I will have a workable system that I will understand at some basic level.
Yeah, I mean, like I was talking about, the OmniFocus guide is over 5 hours, but honestly, the first 2 or 3 hours teaches you everything you need to run the application. Then I start getting into the hippie stuff about, what's the best way to do this and more of the advanced half of the course. But you just sit down with it and you get it together. It is really like my own journey. Honestly, when I did the first version of the OmniFocus Field Guide, I referred heavily on what they call defer dates. So I would look at all my tasks in the morning and say, I don't have time for this one, but I'll do it next Monday. And then I'd push it to Monday, And then I would say, I don't have time for this one today, but I'll push it to a week from Tuesday. Or I don't have time for this morning, but I'll push it to 1 p.m. So by the time I finish that like audit through, and this is the easiest way to use a system, is just to use something like a defer date or a start date to push it into the future, and just be whatever's left is what you're going to do. So it's a simple system. Doesn't work for me anymore because I found myself, because I had too many interruptions, and then I get to Monday and I still wasn't ready for that thing. So this time I came up with some of the options I recommend are different, where you don't rely on that, but you rely more on having really smart ways of getting into the database and getting the stuff you have time to do right now. Say, right now I'm going to work on business X, and I'm going to sit here, and the resources I have available to me are a Mac and a telephone. And I just had coffee and I feel high energy, and I just want to get the stuff that ticks off those boxes. And with OmniFocus, you can easily create a perspective that will expose those to you. And then, like you go to, I went to my daughter's school the other day, pick her up, and I got there early. I had a half hour. So I said, I'm on a park bench with an iPhone. And, what am I going to do? And I got a perspective in OmniFocus. It could show me some things I could do there. And I got some work done for a half hour before she got out. And that's, I think that's the goal for these kinds of things, is for them to serve you that way.
And if that sounds a little bit obsessive, I think that people are missing the point. I see too many people that say, I have, and maybe you're one, Dave, and so I'm not putting anybody down here, but I have, pardon me, I have that half hour, and so I'm going to waste it playing, this game.
Yeah.
And as opposed to, okay, I've got this half hour, I can knock three tasks off my list or more, as long as I know what the right tasks are to work on for that length of time, and with just an iPhone in my hand.
Yeah, and honestly, I think one of the points I make in the course is you need to put your play into a system like this too. What is fun for you, because life can't be all work. But for me, the reason why I would spend that half hour is because I want to be super present for my daughter when she gets out. I want to spend time with her and just have fun with her. And having a little bit of work pushed out of the way lets me feel comfortable about sticking the phone in my pocket and hearing about her life, So, everybody's got different things. But I do think having some kind of system like this can help you.
Yeah. One thing about it, I don't know anybody that's not busy.
Yeah. And I understand this isn't for everyone. I'm not trying to push people into some freaky religion or anything, but, we do have a lot of tasks these days, and a lot of us have a lot of, with those juggling bowling pins in the air, and you don't want to drop any of them. And life is really hard that way. I mean, I think one of the big things you get out of OmniFocus, the other thing I was able to do with this course is, because I've been talking about it and publishing on it for some time now, is I get lots of email from people about the problems they face. And I put a section in the course of kind of answering questions. And the most common question by far people give me is like, I got the system, I love it, except the problem is now I've emptied my brain and there's 10,000 things for me to do in the program, and how do I do that? And the answer is really easy. So you can't do 10,000 things. So now you've taken the time to get all that stuff out of your brain. Take some time, make a cup of tea or coffee, and get your machete out and decide, what doesn't make the cut. Do the things that you need to make a living. Do the things that you're passionate about, and spend your life on those things, and throw all the rest overboard so you have time to play your game at the park. But that's an exercise that we have to go through. And when we try and keep it all in our brain, we don't even get to that level. We don't even realize that we've overloaded ourselves.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the statements I make on Mac Power Users often is, how do you get 10 gallons of water in a 5-gallon bucket? You don't. You spill 5 gallons every time. There's no way to do it, So I feel like, getting the stuff out of your brain into a system allows you to find out if you're trying to carry too much water.
Great analogy. It's such a simple analogy, but it's one that makes perfect sense, because you're right. Every single time you're not going to make it.
Yeah.
So let's talk about, obviously, this is learn.macsparky.com, where the new school is. How much are each of the field guides?
Yeah, you got me at a good time, Chuck. The introductory price is $24. It's going to go up to $29. The Siri Shortcuts one is going to go up first because that got released first. Also, but in there's a ton of stuff in there that's free. Like I made the old workflow field guide, which was about the old workflow app. It's free now, so you can just sign up for it and get it for free if you want to get some free. That's like an hour and a half video on the old workflow app. The app doesn't exist anymore, but it does give you some help, I think, for Siri shortcuts, although it's a little out of date. And then there's like tons of other free stuff in there, like Rose Orchard and I for the Automators podcast. We screencast a lot of the stuff we talk about, and there's a feed of that in there. There's a bunch of, I'd like to say there's an equal assortment of free and paid content. So whatever you want, you can find there.
Great. And I also have to ask, because honestly, I've lost track of all your projects. I know it, obviously, Mac Power users. I know a couple of the others, but I'm going to let you run them off to make sure I don't mess it up.
Yeah, my empire is getting vast. So no, I Chuck, like you, I just make stuff that I'm super passionate about. I did go through the trouble of getting rid of my 10,000 tasks, and it gives me the freedom to do stuff I really love. And so Mac Power users we're heading up on 10 years, and we'll hit show 500 next year, which is crazy. Although we're just babies compared to you, I know. And so that show is still going strong. I have another show called Automators I do with Rose Orchard, which is shorter, and I wanted to do something that we couldn't really do on Mac Power users, is go super geeky, where we actually talk about JavaScript and Siri shortcuts and go like even deeper down the rabbit hole. So that's a very niche show, but if you're interested in automation, that's a good show to listen to. Lots of extra content for that. And then I quit my job, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, and am a free agent. So I still have a business law practice, but it's just me. So Jason Snell and I at the time started a show called Free Agents, and Jason's moved on now, but I got Mike Schmitz with me, who's a really smart young man who is helping me make that show. And that's all about people that are interested in working on their own or getting out, getting away from the man. And so those are the 3 podcasts I do, and then everything else is at Mac Sparky. And the Learn Mac Sparky stuff is a real focus these days, so I'm putting lots of content into that.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, I'm looking forward. I've got a couple things coming up in my life that are keeping me busy, but I'm looking forward in the next week or two to sitting down with the Siri Shortcuts guide and getting up to speed, letting you get me up to speed so that I don't
let me help
myself.
Yeah, I actually have probably in the next, I don't want to say in the next week, but within the next 2 weeks, certainly I'm going to be putting some more videos into that course, because now that the third-party applications have come out, I've got more stuff I want to add to it.
Great. David, you're always welcome to come back and tell us about any updates or any new projects, but congratulations on these. This is outstanding.
Thanks, Chuck. I appreciate it.
I also do want to point out one other thing, that you are in a new office and it looks gorgeous.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, the MacVoices audience saw the curtain in my bedroom for many years.
Yeah.
Because we're in California, you can't afford a big house, and so I had a corner of the master bedroom for years, which I ran my my nerd empire out of. And then I had one daughter go off to school. So I quickly moved into the space, and I'm very happy here. You like it? You see my Chewbacca in the background there? See my Wookiee?
It all looks great. It all looks great, but
yeah,
I'm sorry to hear that your daughter won't have a room to come
me
back.
too. I was a mess. Honestly, I thought I was ready for it, and I completely was not. But she lives close enough that I see her pretty often, so that helps.
That's great. That's great. Well, congratulations on the office too.
Yeah, thanks.
We'll talk to you again soon, I hope.
I hope so. I'm still working, bro.
All right. Sounds good. Sounds good. Folks, I'm Chuck Joyner. This is MacVoices. Go get, at least check out David's field guides. He has a lot of them. They're high quality training. They will help you get do more with what you've got. And again, I love the idea of having somebody walk me through it so that by the time I'm finished the guide, I'm ready to go. I have a functional understanding of what he's talking about. Until the next time, and as always, thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our MacVoices Facebook group and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices magazine, free on Flipboard. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us at patreon.com/MacVoices and join these folks who help keep MacVoices coming to you. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.